And thanks for staying with us on Standpoint. Let's now switch gear to the U.S., where President Joe Biden reaffirmed his commitment to remain in the presidential race, and that's despite growing opposition from Democrats that fueled speculation about his potential withdrawal as early as this weekend. In a written statement from his Delaware Beach home, where he is recovering from COVID, the 81-year-old declared, quote, "The stakes are high and the choice is clear. Together we will win." President Biden pledged to resume campaigning next week and criticized Donald Trump's dark speech at the Republican National Convention on Thursday. However, his resolve was met with increased dissent as 6 more House Democrats and another senator joined those publicly urging him to withdraw from the November election, citing concerns about declining poll numbers and his health. Approximately 25 House Democrats and 3 senators have now called for President Biden to exit the race since his poor debate performance against Mr. Trump, and a series of polls indicating the Republican is on track to reclaim the White House. Meanwhile, days after being shot, Donald Trump has become the Republican presidential nominee. Donald Trump took the stage on Thursday night at the Republican National Convention like a conquering hero. His loyalists, who now fill the ranks of his party, packed the Milwaukee Arena and cheered enthusiastically throughout his hour-and-a-half speech. He pledged to serve all Americans if elected, then recounted in a subdued but almost messianic tone his brush with a spray of bullets. Some delegates even wore bandages over their right ears like their injured political idol in tribute to him. Now I have the publisher of Megastar magazine, Adeniyi Fetayo, here with me in the studio. Good to have you join us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to be here.
And an international affairs analyst, Ifeanyi Okoye, he joins me via Zoom. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to be discussing the latest intrigues in the presidential race in the United States, and then what it actually means for the world, because the world is watching as always. Let me start with you. It does feel like 2020 again.
Yes.
When you look at what's going on, it's again Trump and Biden, but this time just with a few challenges. What's your reading of the political temperature in the U.S.?
For me, it's better to be a defender, in a winning team than you want to be a top striker in a losing team. I think Joe Biden has given so much to the United States, and I think as a leader, one of the things that you must consider is not that the decision must be favorable to you alone. Look at the parties involved, think about the nation, and if you are doing it, I think the best thing for him to do at this time, looking at the debate they had in June, is just for him to step down or support his vice president, because after all, he got there based on the support of former president of America, that's Barack Obama. So for him to gather the momentum with his party, sit down with the governor, sit down with the senator and say, come up with somebody, let's throw our weight behind Kamala Harris and let's see what we get and salvage a Democratic Party.
So let me bring in Okoye, because some people will say it's not that easy, especially when you look at the American voting system. And, there is the whole delegate system that is also involved. But, President Biden has said he's not going to step down, that he believes that with the support of Democrats, he's going to win. Do you see a path of victory for him?
Well, on the part of Biden, I think it's left to the American people more to speak, because presently 40% of Americans from research stated clearly that they are more concerned along voting lines as to do with the economy. And 40% of total voting population of America are so much concerned about the economy. I don't want to bring the word in sentimental, but previously, prior to the last election, people supported Trump because of his inclusiveness and bringing in the American dream. The re-election, which he lost to Biden, has brought a lot of controversies since Biden took over office, as the opening of the borders.
Mr. Okoye, we seem to be having challenge with your network. Maybe we just try and go out and then reconnect. Perhaps we'll have a better connection with you. But let me bring the conversation back to you. He was talking about, you know, or rather we're talking about both Democrats and Republicans, and it would seem as though the tide has turned. You would remember prior to this, it was Republicans that seemed divided.
Yeah.
You know, but we saw at the National Convention where even rivals were lining up behind Donald Trump and speaking glowingly, you know, of him. Even someone like, you know, Nikki Haley, who, you know, was his opponent to the very last moment. But when you look at the other side, which is the blue side, the Democrats, they now are the ones who seem divided. I mean, what does this all mean?
Yes, it still go back to what we are saying. It's just for you to read between the line, especially when it has to do with your health, when it has to do with governing the most powerful nation in the world. And it's not just all about your decision to stick to power or to say, because I won't throw in the towel, but look at the majority. How will it affect the party? How are they going to bounce back? Because based on his performance the last time and now, we are not praying. Do
you really think that, sorry to interrupt you, but do you really think that this is about holding on to power, or that he really believes that he can win? Because Biden has never been the kind of person to believe in polls. He's never been a poll person, doesn't think that, you know, they state the true picture of things. But do you think that he really believes that he can win?
Yes, of course. You know, if they ask anybody in an election, he will tell you that he was not going to lose. I'm in the race for me to win. But at this time, look at the indices, look at the people, look at the party they are talking about. And I would say it's not Biden that we are seeing, a Biden of 20 years ago or Biden of 8 years ago. Things have changed, health-wise, your age, and I think he's losing it. Even for your own family to be calling you and say, come on, you need to, let's look for somebody who is vibrant, who is younger, and I think that he can face, he can give Donald Trump a run for his money. So I think he should listen to the leadership of his party. You know, they were there in the first instance. They supported him all the way. So if they are saying, looking at, there are some things you might not see by yourself, and why those people who are outside, who are your leader, who are your party member, can give you an advice. And I think you should yield to them and just say, okay, give me a nominee. Let's support Kamala Harris and see what comes out from it. But
some have also criticized the criticized Democrats, you know, especially the senior members of the Democratic Party, and how they have handled this, you know, making it so public that perhaps if they actually come, you know, with a show of strength and rally behind him, perhaps maybe he could win.
No. It was obvious during the debate. It was obvious, and looking at the economy, the inflation, you know, so many things determine election. It's not just about your performance. Just one debate, they will still have another one in September 6th, I think. So looking at those, there's a war front in Gaza. You know, America is such a nation that even when you have a headache, they are concerned, even though it's not from their country. So looking at all those economic policy and inflation and tax and all of that. So those are the things that is calling for the attention and saying, no, we don't think this man can continue in this race. Is a wisdom for you to look at somebody and give him or her your support.
All right, let me just quickly confirm if we have Mr. Okoye back in the conversation. All right, so Mr. Okoye, let me ask you, we've been seeing, when you look at Trump, right, in the prior to the 2020 election, we saw someone who was very, you know, I mean, we listened to our introduction, we talk about the messianic attitude. A bit of that was displayed. But as you listen to his speech, you know, which was about 19 minutes, did you see a different Trump?
Trump seems to assume courage, and he has demonstrated that he has what it takes to get back to the White House, irrespective of the assassination attempt, which in some quarters has been an issue of controversy as regards whether it was staged or not. But I can tell you the gains over the past 4 years of Biden has left Americans in question of if he should be re-elected as regards the increase in inflation, increase in credit, increase in tax rates from the average Americans, and also the relaxing of the border issues that made a lot of illegal immigrants, especially from the southern borders, to truth. Because as at last year, December, there was about 322,000 immigrants, which was the highest all-time in the history of America. And Trump, in his own time, curtailed most of these things by building a wall, and also not just building a wall, but reducing the influx of immigrants from the southern border, so as to have to plan for the American in regards to the healthcare system, education system, which also Biden has relaxed most of them. And this calls for question as they approach the poll. But prior to that, as the election build up, I think by September 10, that's when they have one of the last debates. Those are going to, those are where the candidate will be able to tell the Americans some of their policies, their vision ahead of the election. And it's going to be a thing of joy, because by then Biden will have recovered from his COVID. And the issue of the question of whether he should step down or shouldn't step down has been an issue of controversy, most especially within his close associates within the party.
So I'm staying with you. All right. Mr. Okoye, I'm staying with you because there are three issues here. One of them is you have mentioned the economy and immigration together, which is what a lot of Americans are judging Biden on. But there is also the issue of foreign policy, which a lot of people think that, that's where Trump is quite, unpredictable and deficient. And that's, how America maintains its standing on the global order. You saw the disruption to that, during his first term. And people are worried, look, what will happen, if he were to win again? In all of these issues, what do you think matters most to Americans? And then what would his presidency, if he wins, mean for the world?
First and foremost, America has been a nation that has interests globally when it comes to global peace and stability and economy. And Trump presidency, know-how, more or less centered around the American dreams, American first, making America great again. And we could recall during his tenure, Trump was so much vocal as regards the issues within the insurgency that happened, as well as some of these Arab countries. About 5 countries were on the watch list, that they were declared persona non grata in the US. And beyond that,
all right, Mr. Okoye, I also have to put you on hold. Your network is a bit shaky. Let me come to you, Mr. Fatai, in the studio, because America has a presence, if not in every country in the world, but at least in almost every country in the world. And so you see how everyone is watching. I'm sure in Europe right now, there is a lot of concern because America is the leader for Europe, whether we like it or not. And so as you see what's going on one hand, people say, look, Trump didn't handle foreign policy well. He pulled out of some organizations while he was there. But when you also look at the Biden presidency, look at the disastrous pullout from Afghanistan, you look at how the U.S. relations with Saudi Arabia has also now deteriorated. Then you also see how, there's a lot of people also talk about the interference, which was not, the norm under Trump. Trump was, mind your business, let's mind our business. As you look at, where do you think that the world will likely align, when it comes to both of them?
Everybody needs an ally that you can rely on, not the one that can dictate. And so looking at the foreign policy during Donald Trump's first tenure, which was not well managed, but this time around, I think he should have learned better from the first shot at the presidency. And come to think of it, it's just for you to have some advisor who are very vast when it comes to foreign policy and all of that. So looking at the way the world will be looking at them, they want the best for them. If you are, just like we said, in a few weeks to come, there will be issue on foreign policy, there will be issue on taxation, on right wing or left wing, on abortion. So depending on where the candidate, want to pitch their tent, will determine the support they will get all over the world, if I'm supporting Party A or I'm supporting Party B. But give it to Joe Biden. That's why I believe if he can give the support to his vice president, I believe, who has been in the job with him, and they can still put up a fight during the election.
And you saw the comment. I mean, you're saying that maybe advisors But you saw the comments he made during one of his campaign trips on NATO. He's talked about NATO. He's talked about the war, between Ukraine and Russia. He's talked about, ending that war within the first 2 weeks thereabouts of his presidency if he wins. But he never really states how. And Ukrainians are afraid that perhaps it might be through some sort of negotiations that doesn't work in their favor. And so that's some of the fears around the world. But for Biden, there also, again, I talked about interference, especially in Africa, where, some of the issues are, whether it's immigration, whether it's human rights, all of those interference. And when you look at all of those sexual rights and all of that for Africans who are saying, no, stay away from our laws. And so what's the implication of both of their foreign policy? Which do you think that the world needs now?
If you are to look at the foreign policy, if you want to judge by that, I think the world will want to sway with Joe Biden, because he had an experience, he has been there, he has spent so much time in the, spent over 36 years, I think, in the Senate, and being a vice president and also a president. So he has all the knowledge, the expertise, relating, and he has presided over the affairs of the nation in the last 4 years. That's American. So looking at that alone, yes, it will tilt towards Joe Biden, but not just only foreign policy that will determine this election, and not just only economy that will determine this election. Winning an election, it takes all around that to make sure you are good in this aspect, you are good in that aspect. Just like someone will say that I may not be vast in every subject of the world, but I have an experience, at least a measure of an experience from here, from that. It's just like a family man in a family. You won't say, because I provided meal for my children, I'm only concerned about their food. What about their education? What about their well-being? What about their security? So those are the issues in coming days leading to the election. As at yesterday, I can see the poll giving it to Trump about 47% and Biden 44%. That can still change, depending on the decision that the Democrats they are going to make going to the election.
Again, I understand we have Mr. Okoye now. Hopefully, the network is pleasant this time and we can really have a conversation with you. Mr. Okoye, let's talk about Africa. For Africa, when you speak to Africans, whether Nigerians or around in every other country on the continent, two things stand out. One of them is immigration, and you saw how that played out. On that Trump, for him it was, and in fact there was a name, he even generalized these countries with, and they were banned on some kind of visas, and people are watching that with some level of skepticism and saying what would happen, if he wins. But for on the Biden, people are also talking about all of the LGBTQ rights which have been banned in most countries in Africa with very strong laws, and we've seen how they have continued to clamp down on these countries that have banned these rights. And so as you look at it, how do you think Africans are viewing this election and what it means for us?
As far as I'm concerned, African nations have little or no stake, because Americans have a lot of issues to deal with. The major challenge Africa has is its leadership, and the American government careless, most especially when it comes to immigration, when it comes to, we saw clearly how we refer to African nations as shithole. And Trump is just a presidential candidate who is very blatant on his own views about issues, and it's not being conservative when he's expressing his opinion on issues. And this same Trump asked a particular leader, "What are you doing about killings, religious killings in your country?" And there was no response. So America is not going to interfere in African affairs. Because most African countries, by nature and by virtue of existing laws, they are independent, so they can cater for themselves. So America will only support with aid, grants, and what they could do. So African nations are only waiting, maybe whoever and look into Africa, Like recently, there's a foreign policy as regards Africa having a base in Africa, military base, and came up early this year by some of the leaders in the north when they went to have a meeting as regards security in the north. So there was issue of having a security base or military base in Africa, most especially Nigeria was one of the places. The people said, no, why would America come in to have a military base in Nigeria? Oh, they are going to spy on your security. So it's a whole lot of issues. I don't think Africa has anything to offer the American, or rather we stand to benefit from their magnanimity in terms of aid, foreign policy that regard grants. But the issue of LGBTQ, I think that's another issue for another day, because Africa, most countries are a sovereign state. So America can neither impose, or rather they can sanction if need be, and withdraw their aid and support. But even at that, African leaders are our greatest problem. If Africa is functioning optimally with its God-given resources and whatever it has, we don't need foreign aid or grants to run our economy.
So finally for you, Mr. Fatayo, when you look at all of this divisive politics we've seen in the U.S., in the past few days, what does this mean, or its implication for America's global standing? And then, its democracy and alliance?
We believe that when it comes to democracy, that's American for you. Anybody can become anything so far you have the right. But when you are looking at the election, what it tends to be important for the world is that democracy must take its course. Let it be all about the nation. Let it be all about the people. Let it be what is good for the people. And of course, Americans have a choice to make in the coming days as regard to who become their president, who rule them in the next 4 years.
Absolutely. And it's a huge choice that we're seeing with a lot of polarization. And we're following that election in the U.S. And I'm sure, again, the world is actually following as well. Yep. Thank you both for talking to us. The publisher of Megastar magazine, Adeniyi Ifetayo.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
And also international affairs analyst. Sadly, we couldn't get the best of your analysis because of the network. Ifeanyi Okoye, thank you so much for joining us as well.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's Standpoint. Remember, you can watch a repeat broadcast at 11 p.m. tonight and at 5 a.m. on Sunday morning. I am Precious Amayo. Thanks for watching.